You can eat it.
I'm going to tighten this down a little bit more. Yeah. Would you come with me real quick? Right. And I'll just be back there when I get back from my thing, okay? Yeah, you're already live. It's 2 o'clock.
Air raid drill. Like they're going to say.
Well, good morning again, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today to our very important training that we're going to be having here in just a few moments. I have two special guests behind me today. Just a couple of things. We have coffee in the back, regular and decaf, and the soda machine is open. So this is a relaxed kind of atmosphere. As long as you're paying attention to the two gentlemen behind me, please feel free to get up and help yourself. I do hope that you do take this very seriously. It's unfortunate in today's society that we have to have this kind of training, but all of you are super special to me, and I want to make sure that we're delivering all the safety stuff we can give you, whether you stay here with us or you go back to your home states. So just please pay attention to this. We also have coming up in April, I just booked us with HPH Hospice, the 5 Wishes. And that's advanced directives that you walk through. If you don't have that or would like to sit through that seminar, that's going to be also a free seminar. So be looking for that flyer that will be coming out. That's another important thing to have in your home or with your families, okay? I am going to now turn over the rest of the time to the two deputies behind me. Deputy James Dean, the famous James Dean, right? How many of you know James Dean? I think he's a little taller, right?
A little bit, a lot more.
And then do you want to introduce your...
Yeah, we'll take it from there. So, okay, like she said, my name is James Dean. I've been a deputy for 32 years, a little over 32. I have 14 more months to go, or 1 Mega Millionaire Powerball ticket. But I I started my career in Pasco County. I transferred up here to work for any of you that have been here for a great number of years, the illustrious Sheriff Tom Mylander. He had such a stellar reputation. I left Pasco to come up here and work for him. And I found a home here. I've been here for going on 29 years. I did a lion's share of my career in patrol, so all the calls, everything from the mundane to the murders, I've seen everything that Hernando County has to offer. I can tell you, we have everything that every other community has that you hear and read about and see on the news. We just have it on a much smaller scale. But if it's happening anywhere in the country, it happens here, whether it's murders or drug addiction. So we see it all, we just see it on a much smaller scale, thankfully, here. But like I said, I did a lion's share of my career in road patrol. I did some school resource officer work, which you'll hear from Deputy Deso as well, that a lot of times, obviously, when we hear active shooter, we think of schools. We're going to find out, we're actually going to change your mind about that today when he does his part of the presentation. But it is near and dear to us because those are our children, those are our future. I can tell you as an SRO for both of us, when you go to school, every one of those kids is yours. If you're an SRO, that's how you feel. So from the SRO program, I transferred back to the road for several more years. And then I thought I was going to actually retire, so I took a nice, what I thought was an easy job working in our transportation unit. Found out that was too easy. Nothing against those guys, but I needed more. So an opening came in the community policing unit where we both presently work. We are the office handymen. We do everything in handy women. We have women in our unit as well. We do everything. We work with almost every unit within the sheriff's office. We still cover schools. We go out and do special events like this. Both of us are certified from the state of Florida as crime prevention practitioners in residential and commercial security applications. And then we're certified through the national organization CEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, which is through like when you're building a building or a subdivision or a neighborhood or a park, how you can use the natural features and landscapes to better make that a more secure location. I wear a lot of other hats with Jason. I work under him actually, even though I have more years than him. He's my boss in a lot of ways. He is our head advisor for the Explorers or Junior Deputy program, so I assist him with that. And with that fine note, I'm not going to bore you with anything else. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Deso for his introduction.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. Wow, that's great. All right. How is everybody this morning? That was horrible. How is everybody this morning? That's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, again, my name is Deputy Jason Deso. I've been with the Sheriff's Office 23 years next week. Before that, 5 years, I was an explorer myself. The sheriff said I could not use that time, so I'm still here. So you have to deal with me for the next 2.5 hours. I'm sorry. But anyways, like Jimmy, I worked on the road for a few years. I went into community policing in 2003. I worked here in Brooksville for probably, well, going on now 18 years, not total, like straight through, but 18 years. I've worked in the area of Brooksville, city of Brooksville, Ridge Manor, Mazartown, you name it, out here on the east side with the cows and everything. I worked out here. I had a momentary lapse of sanity, and I went and I worked in the SRO unit at our local high school, Nature Coast Technical High School, for 6 years. Where, like Jimmy said a few minutes ago, a lot of the information I'm going to give you today is from some of the conferences. I've met a lot of the individuals that have been involved in a lot of the big time known incidents, and we have a lot of information to share with you all about that. Like Jimmy says, we wear a lot of hats. I run the Explorer program for the Sheriff's Office. I did 15 years hostage negotiation, all the way up to assistant team leader. Then on multiple call-outs, our CIT instructor, crisis intervention, mental health training for law enforcement instructor. So we do a lot, and we have a lot of information to kind of give you today. Couple things real quick. This is not a tactics course, So at no point is someone going to come through these doors and start shooting blank rounds and I'm going to say, go get him. No, that's not going to happen. So you guys can sit back, relax. We're going to actually train your brain today. Train your brain on how to react in a critical incident. We're going to show you how your brain works when stress levels go up. And we are going to give you some things to think about, to put in your brain to help you in case of an incident that you're involved in. And it doesn't have to be an active shooter event. It can be just about anything. Before we get started, I'm going to give you the lay of the land, but you already know it because you come here a lot. But you have exits on both sides of you to go out to the parking lot, right? There is actually 2 exits here in the kitchen that you can exit in case of emergency out those doors. You can get out those doors and go to your left. You can go through the next room, and there's exits out both those doors to get out. But you already know that, and you know where the bathrooms are. Very important. There will be a break halfway through, so you won't have to hear us straight for 2.5 hours. So you will have a little bit of break because cops can't go for long. So I need, before we get started, I need 1 volunteer. Just 1. Yes, ma'am. What's your name? Janet, do you have a cell phone? Yes. Okay. In the event, Janet, that there is an actual emergency during this event, this class, Deputy Dean and I will take care of whatever's happening. All I need you to do is when you're safe, in a safe location, call 911. Do you understand? You know the number? Perfect. I do not perceive there to be an incident, but you never know, okay? Whether it's medical or something else. So, without further ado, we'll get started. I have to rely on my clicker. Click.
You did.
Oh. Hard to find it. So it's just like looking at it. Oh, there it is. Well, now you're there. Now you're even back.
I'm back to the original. We're going to try this again.
So stand by. Okay.
I am not computer savvy. Just so you know.
All right. Columbine High School, 1999 is kind of the jumping point for active shooter events as far as law enforcement is concerned. We have changed our tactics since Columbine about 4 different times. Back then it was surround and wait for SWAT. Then we went to a 4-person diamond formation, wait for 4 people to get on scene and go in. Realized that wasn't fast enough. We waited for 2 people to get on scene. We trained how to do a 2-person response. And of course now after Parkland, we're down to the 1-person response. Those of us that were SROs prior to the first-person response, 1-person response, already knew it was a 1-person response for us because we were in the school and we were going to be the only ones on scene if something were to happen. So SROs have really been training, at least in our agency, 1-person response for quite a while. But Columbine High School, what you're about to listen to is a 911 call from inside Columbine High School the day of the shooting. I cannot fathom being a dispatcher getting a frantic phone call of an actual shooting inside of a school, much less being 1999 when it wasn't as prevalent, right? So it's going to be kind of hard to hear at times, but there are subtitles up there if you can read them to kind of stay with what's happening. What I really want you to pay attention to is what's being said, how it's being said, and the frequency that is being said. And we're going to discuss after this video plays exactly why that is. Okay, so that was the librarian, Patty Nielsen. And unbeknownst to her, this phone call disconnects right there. She ends up hiding in a metal file cabinet. She does survive. However, 10 of the 12 fatalities occurred inside her library. No fault of her own, because had there been a fire inside her library, she would have known exactly what to do to get all those students out safely, because there was protocol in place and they practiced it and it was in her head of what to do in a fire emergency, but never had she fathomed that an unarmed gunman would come into her library and start killing students and faculty. And you can hear her trying to find what she needs to do, but just like I can probably use the word Rolodex in this room, she was looking through her Rolodex of information and could not find what she was looking for, because at no point had she ever put it in the Rolodex on what might happen or could happen. So we're going to go over a lot of incidents that occurred throughout the United States and throughout the world over the next 2.5 hours. And at no point are we here to Monday morning quarterback or laugh and make fun of what someone did, because prior to that day, they had never trained themselves to do whatever, and they did the best that they could do in those situations. What we are going to do is we're going to look at what they did and improve how we can do better things in the future if we were ever in a similar situation or a situation like that. We're going to start with a 12-minute video. If all I had was 12 minutes to give you active shooter in a nutshell and what to do, this would be the video I would show you. But I have you for 2.5 hours. All right? So you get the full show. All right? But who here has heard of run, hide, fight? Okay. Kind of old terminology, and I'll explain as we go on later why we like avoid, deny, defend a lot better. And this is really kind of the up-and-coming method to use for active shooter events. So without further ado, I'm going to show you this 12-minute video, and we'll talk after.
There's a gunman inside the store. We need help now.
What's going to be the solution by the time we are
There's a gunman inside the store. He's shooting the place out. We need help now.
issues that we found?
There you go. You're safe for that. It's gotta be gone swimming. Look, baby. No, look. Run. To the right. To the morning dock. Come on, this way. Oh, look, come here. Yeah, get here. We're gonna have to defend ourselves. You're gonna see your daughter tonight, okay? We are all going to go home tonight. All right? We have the right to defend ourselves. Get the guns! Get the guns! Hold them down, hold them down. Yes, yeah, we're all good. Everybody's on. Yeah.
If you ever have the misfortune to be in an active shooter event, you deserve to survive. In our research, we have found that the actions that potential victims take during these events are critical to their survival. We have identified 3 options that have proven effective in many events. These are: avoid the attacker, deny the attacker access to your area, defend yourself. It is a personal decision, but you have a right to do so. Avoiding the attacker starts with being aware of your surroundings at all times and knowing what is going on around you. If you see or hear something that looks suspicious, take action. For example, the stalker took immediate and effective action to protect himself when he observed the shooter pulling out weapons from the bag. Others, however, hesitated, and this hesitation can cost them valuable time that they could have used to get away from the threat. If you hear something that is, or could be, gunfire, start trying to get away from it as soon as possible. Gunfire has a distinctive sound. Inside of buildings, the sound can be muffled or distorted. A single loud bang could be a person dropping something, or even thunder. But repeated loud bangs are much more likely to be gunfire. Additionally, look at the reaction of others. Are they startled or scared? Are they running? What are they saying? Any one of these events individually may create denial, but when put together, should create a heightened awareness and stimulate an immediate response. It is important that you know how to get out. The situation will be chaotic and rapidly changing. In general, you will want to go to the nearest exit. But you must also understand that the closest exit may not be accessible or safe to use. If this is the case, go to a different exit. While avoiding the threat, consider the uses of cover and concealment. Cover offers protection from gunfire, while concealment minimizes your exposure to the attacker. Try to keep objects between you and the attacker. If you can't avoid the attacker, sometimes the best option will be to deny the attacker access to your location. In many locations, this can be accomplished by closing and locking a door, such as they did in the meeting room. Locking the door has proven effective in many attacks. If the door does not have a lock, you can place heavy objects in front of it. Remember, barricades work best if the door opens toward you. If it doesn't, use things that are readily available, such as straps, belts, or objects that can be used to block or secure the door to make it difficult for the attacker to enter the room. This may at least slow the attacker down and give you time to identify alternate means of escape, such as adjoining rooms or windows. When attempting to deny access to your location, you want to make it appear that there is no one in your area. Lock turn off the lights, silence your phones, and get out of sight. Your attempt to deny the attacker access to your location might fail.
The gunman's coming. What are we going to do? We're going to have to defend ourselves.
Have a backup plan about what you will do. In many cases, this may be to defend yourself. You need to be in a place where you can act if the attacker comes into your location. In most rooms, you will line up against the same wall if the door is on, near the door so you can react, but not directly in front of it. If you are unable to avoid or deny, your best option may be to defend yourself by using whatever is available. In a situation where someone is attempting to kill you, you have the legal right to defend yourself. Attack weak spots such as eyes, throat, and groin. Fight to the best of your ability and do not quit until the attacker is stopped. This is what the workers in the warehouse did when they were unable to avoid the attacker and felt their lives were in immediate danger. Whatever option you choose, call 911 as soon as you are in a safe location. Provide any information that you know. The operator will ask you a lot of questions. If you don't know the answer, don't guess. Just say you don't know and only state the facts. This will be a complex situation, and we can't tell you what you should do in every case. What we can do is provide you with information about the options that we have found to be most effective for surviving these attacks. The ultimate choice is yours. What you do matters. Avoid the attacker. Deny access to your location. Defend yourself. Law enforcement will be entering a chaotic scene with limited information. Their first priority will be to stop the threat to your safety. The police may not know where or who the threat is. Listen and comply with their commands immediately.
Put it down, sir. Put it down. Both of you on the ground.
Police are trained to look at people's hands to assess threats. Do not have anything in your hands that could be perceived as a weapon, such as a cell phone.
Show me your hands, sir. Show me your hands. Move to us. Everybody, keep your hands up, please. Walk out the door.
If told to do so, stay where you are and do not make sudden movements. Again, follow all commands. Remember, what you do matters. Avoid the attacker. Deny access to your location. Defend yourself. Remember, ADD. You can survive.
Okay, so again, avoid, deny, defend. That's a video put on by Texas State University in cooperation with Walmart. If for some reason you have a group of people that you want to show this to, family members, friends, whatever, you can go online at YouTube and type in avoid, deny, defend, or civilian response to active shooter events, and you get this exact video right there. But that's not all. All right, so we're going to start to get into the meat and potatoes of how your brain works under stress and in a critical incident, so that we can better prepare ourselves. So I'm going to let Deputy Dean take over from there.
All right, like Deputy Diesel said, we have you for a little while, so we're going to teach you some things. And I don't want you to get stuck on the term active shooter, because what we're going to teach you can be used in any critical incident, whether it's a threat by a person or a natural disaster, a fire, a car accident, anything like that. But what we want to do is study the different effects that stress exhibits on the body and how those affect your decisions, and more importantly, how you can actually control those decisions. And what we're going to do is we're going to study the 3 responses that the body goes through when it's exposed to stress during a critical incident. And there's an English psychologist by the name of Amanda Ripley who did a lot of her studies in psychology in disaster responses and how people react. But more importantly, she studied what people went through and how they survived and why they survived. And during this course of study, She found out the body goes through 3 distinct features as it's exposed to threat. And she identified those as the denial stage, the deliberation stage, and then the decisive moment. And we're going to break those down in a minute. But more importantly, what she discovered when seeing who survived natural disasters, what she found out was that the people who were more likely and did survive these events processed the first 2, the denial, deliberation, and got to the decisive moment and had a pre-plan in place of what they might do in the event of a threat or an attack. And they were more likely to survive. So we're going to break these down. And the first one is denial. And basically what she identified, the reason why the body goes into denial, there's a couple of different reasons. One of the first ones is a little thing called the normalcy bias. And what that is the brain basically on a daily basis wants to understand things in rather simple terms. That's why a lot of times when they interview somebody who's involved in an incident like this and they say, well, what happened? And they talk about gunfire. And what's one of the first things that everybody always describes gunfire as? I thought it sounded like firecrackers. And one of the reasons is because of the normalcy bias is the brain can better process somebody shooting off firecrackers than it can somebody shooting a gun and killing your coworkers, your friends, your families, your neighbors. So the second thing she found out, and we saw a nice example of this morning when Jason asked for volunteers, is social proofing. Has anybody ever heard of the term social proofing? It's also linked to another term she coined called the diffusion of responsibility. Now, when Jason asked for a volunteer, everybody's hands went up, right? We looked around, right? That's natural. That's the body's natural reaction. Who's going to do it? Social proofing is basically in a unique or stressful incident. We look around to see what others are doing. And the flip side of that is diffusion of responsibility is where we say, that's not my problem, it's somebody else's, right? And for those who are in the military right now, don't volunteer for anything, right? That's the advice they don't ever volunteer for anything. But we look around. And then what happens is when we break through that social proofing, then other hands go up. But we're going to watch a video. And before we do, the last thing to get through the denial stage, one of the quickest ways to get through the denial stage is go with your gut. Has anybody ever heard the term the body's secondary brain? The digestive system. And one of the reasons why they say that is there's almost as many neurotransmitters, which is the message senders of the body, in your digestive system as there are in your brain. So when you get stressed out, where do you usually feel it? Some people get a headache. Other people feel it in their gut, right? That's my gut instinct. Something's not right. My gut told me. Right? So go with your gut. It's usually right. And the reason why is those neurotransmitters sense the stress and know something is right. But we're going to watch a quick video about social proofing. This is basically, it's shot in London, so it might be a little different than here in Hernando County, where if we see somebody lying down, we're probably more apt. But the important thing is to watch. This is outside the London train station. And watch what happens when one person does the right thing, how the community comes together to help out. And this is how breaking through the social proofing, and we'll talk about it in a minute to see why it's important to do that in critical incident.
In New York City, if you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill. How long before he gets help? Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting a pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. Listen, got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You alright? Yes, thank you. Sure, a little bit.
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
What's up? You alright? Sure.
As I thought she was dead, then I kept seeing she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her, because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
How do you say?
6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you have to remember this?
No.
Why are you lying on the floor, right?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I was just actually in this position of feeling ill, and nobody helped him walk me past, so I just like to check that he was okay. And I thought he was wet, so he must really go into the room in 16.
No matter how many times I see that, I always get a little chuckle for the lady in the white jacket, because we're pretty sure that if it wasn't for the construction worker gentleman that stopped first, she probably would have kept going. But the important part to take away from this isn't what people didn't do, it's what happened when somebody finally did the right thing and broke that social proving, how other people came around. And we're going to see this in the future of how we can utilize this to protect ourselves and others during a critical incident. So we get through our denial stage, most important. Get through it as fast as you can. Now we get into our deliberation phase, which is basically we know there's an issue, but what are we going to do about it? Now the problem is, though, is because we're under a stressful situation, all right, our body's going to start to change. Because under normal circumstances, we're sitting here right now, if I ask somebody a question, they're going to give it some thought, they're going to give an appropriate answer, what they think is an appropriate answer or appropriate response. The problem is when we're under stress, and we're going to see in some videos coming up, how quickly we lose that human brain and we resort to what they call the lizard brain, or what I call the squirrel brain. And like I said, we realize under normal, non-stressful situations, we can think about things, right? We can have some different thoughts or ideas. What's the right answer? What should I do? But when we throw stress into that, all of a sudden we got the lizard brain. Here in Florida, we're blessed with those little lizards, right? They run all over and we see what they do. All right? And usually what happens is those lizards really have 3 options. They don't have that human brain. They're born with the lizard brain, so stress, no stress. They handle things the same way all the time. The fight, right? You go close to a lizard, what's the first thing they do? They kind of look like they try to get a little bigger, right? They might puff that piece of skin out. They kind of get up on their little, I guess, lizard toes, for lack of a better term, right? That's how they fight. They try to look more aggressive. When that doesn't work, what do? They scurry off. And ultimately, if you get close to them, and you're like me, and when you hear the stories when you first moved to Florida, because I'm up north, you got to grab one, right? Hanging off your ear. Anybody done that? Made a mistake. He bit my cheek and hung off my cheek for a little while. But anyway, but they freeze, right? Not overall, not bad choices, because lizards have been around for thousands of years and they've survived. But are there some better options for us in critical incidents than just the fight, flight, or freeze? So we're going to study those, but in order to do those, we have to realize what the body goes through when it's exhibiting stress. This is the heart rate chart. What's the first thing if we stress somebody out, right? We get scared, you hear that bump in the night. You know, I'm 6'10", 320 pounds. I hear that bump in the night, I'm like, oh my God, what was that? You know? So we're all, it's that natural reaction. But what happens right away when we're under stress? Heart rate goes up. That affects everything. So we're going to look at this really quick. 60 to 90 beats per minute, what they call the white zone, where we all should be right now. Healthy, resting heartbeat. Where we function most of the time where we're not under physical exertion or stressful moments. Right? We can think, we keep that human brain. But if we put stress on there, the first thing that goes up is the heart rate. So if we can't control it, we start to go up, we get into the 90 to 120 beats per minute, which is the yellow zone. Still not a bad zone to be in. We have our gross motor skills. We're starting to lose our fine motor skills now, which is, you know, maybe threading a needle or putting a, you know, key into a lock. But we can still function. We still have our gross motor skills. But as our heart rate goes up, we start to lose some of our motor skills. But more importantly, we get stronger to a certain extent. When we hit the red zone, 120 to 150 beats per minute, all right, we're starting to lose, we've lost our fine motor skills. And we're starting to lose our gross motor skills. But this is what they call the Superman phase. This is where you're the strongest, the fastest. This is where they interview somebody and they lift, the mother lifted the soda machine off the child all by herself and she has no idea how she did it. Or two people lift a car up and pull the motorcyclist out from underneath it. That's because they're in that 120 to 150 beats per minute. So we're starting to lose some of our human brain, but we still got our strength. So if we have that plan in place before, 120 to 150 beats per minute is still not a bad zone to be in. The problem is if we don't control our stress, our heart rate keeps going up. We get into the 150 to 175 beats per minute, which is the gray area. This is where we start to lose all our motor skills and our thought process. This is where we experience things like time dilation. They interview somebody who was involved in an incident. They say, oh, it seems like forever before the cavalry got there. And it was, you know, just a couple of seconds or even minutes. Or auditory exclusion, where things sound muffled and off in the distance. And lastly, that tunnel vision, where we just see right here. And law enforcement, when they've studied law enforcement and shootings, have gone through those same things. They don't realize backup is there. They talk about, oh my God, it took forever for my backup to get there, and backup was there in seconds. But all those things are getting distorted because your heart rate is going up. 175 beats per minute and above, that is the black zone. That is where we don't want to be. That is where the body shuts down and just goes into survival mode of protecting the organs. That's where we get the, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. We start to, you know, avoiding our bladder and our bowels. So that is where you are useless to form any plan or any physical action to protect yourself. That's where the body is just wrapped up in itself. So we want to keep that heart rate low. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes to see how we can do that. We're going to watch this video, and this goes quick, so Jason is going to replay it a couple times. But watch what happens to this gentleman. But watch who takes his place. You'll see a woman come up with a stroller with a small child in it. And obviously, up near the front of this store, this is security camera footage, is where the threat is. So everybody's heart rate goes up. But watch how something so simple and mundane as unhooking her child from the stroller becomes a struggle and almost a fight for her life. If you watch it, and we'll play it a couple times, she never does get the straps undone. She finally just basically rips the child out of the stroller. We talk about the human brain. Something she's probably done hundreds, you know, depending on how many children, how old they are, thousands of times, right? That we put our children into strollers and car seats and jumpy chairs and everything else. But when you introduce stress, watch how quickly this woman and other people getting that tunnel vision, when you see what happens to the older gentleman and that nobody really reacts. Watch how quickly people lose their human brains and end up in that lizard brain with those 3 survival modes, and we'll let it play a few times. You see how quickly things go from normal activities to fight for your life. You see the people could you imagine in everyday life you're just shopping, you're just pushing past the woman with the stroller? Or I'm sure those people didn't even have that concept when they get that tunnel vision of survival mode of knocking that older gentleman to the ground. But see how quickly, you saw how quickly things went from normal to out of control as those heart rates went up. So it's very important to keep that heart rate under control. This is a diagram of the Station nightclub in West Warwick, I almost nailed it, Rhode Island. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, the Station nightclub fire with the band Great White. This was 2003, 6, 7. Anyway, the band Great White goes to play a concert at a bar. There's in excess of 400 people there. This is the diagram of the actual bar. You can see the number 1 area up near the middle. That's the entrance. That's where everybody came in. All the patrons came in where they were ID'd and had their tickets checked. And then you see some of the other exits. You see here the white stripe at the side. Those are like atrium style windows, and there's a pool area there. So there's pool balls and pool sticks and all kinds of things that can be used to break the window. The video, you'll see it for a glimpse. It's actually filmed by a news cameraman from a local news station. He's doing the video segment for security at nightclubs. And unfortunately, he catches this fire. The fire kills 132 people were killed during the fire. But watch the panic that sets in, but importantly, watch how quickly the cameraman, probably because he has that training, that eye for catching things with his camera. Watch how quickly he goes through his denial and starts to back up and looking for exits. But watch what happens. The panic sets in, the smoke sets in, and watch how quickly the front door area becomes a bottleneck. quickly that cameraman realized he hands up. What happened was they set off pyrotechnics inside, which you could see, and it caught insulation on fire. Any firemen or women in here? Flashover? Are you familiar with that? All right, that is the temperature of a fire, how long it takes for a fire to reach a temperature where basically anything flammable will ignite. And flashover for that fire took 1 minute. That's why they show the clock. But did you see how quickly those windows blacked over? I don't know if you caught it in the beginning when he panned over. You could see the light from the parking lot coming in those windows. But what happened? Everybody panicked. Everybody came in the front door. Right? So where are they going to leave in that panic state? And you saw that bottleneck. You saw the people. Unfortunately, when the investigators went in, when the fire was put out, there was 100 people deceased in or around the building from this fire. But you see where if 100 of them passed away, you can see where over 50% of them were by that front door in that bottleneck. They said when they first went in that the bodies were over halfway up to the ceiling. And once again, we get that lizard brain. Just like the people who were push the old man in the last video to the ground, you probably had people that in their brain that fight for your life, well, they weren't even processing. They were climbing over other human beings at that time. But you saw how quickly the panic set in with no plan in place. That cameraman went through those 3 stages. You saw how quickly he backed out. A lot of people didn't have a plan until it was too late. And you see what happens, but things could have been done. Windows could have been broken. You saw people outside, and I think they escaped, but they were still in a state of shock. They still didn't have a plan in place. What do I do to help the others that are inside? Because we had broken some windows. You started to hear it at the end, and maybe to the left of the door, so people started to try, it looks like. But all those windows pretty much stayed intact. Whether you're in the inside or the outside, those could have been broken, used as a secondary escape. We're going to talk about that later in the program. The nice thing you can do is your body is very resilient. And no matter how young or old you are, you can always teach a young or old dog new tricks, right? And that's what we're doing today. We're putting some stuff in your brain that hopefully you didn't have before, that in the event something is like this happens, that now you have some plans in place. These are what I call the mom rules, all right? I graduated high school, I was 6'8", 211 pounds. You think I got picked on? I didn't fill out till I was in my mid-20s. Thankfully, there wasn't the internet back then, so I only got picked on at school. But I came home upset a lot. I wasn't this strong, stellar, competent individual I am now. All right? I would have been mortified. My 17-year-old self would never see me in front of you all just, comfortable and enjoying myself, for lack of a better term. But these are my mom rules. These are the scientific mom rules. You come home from school, I come home from school, I'm all upset. What's the first thing mom tells you? Calm down. All right? Tell yourself, you saw it in the video, you're going to go home. You're going to see your daughter. You're going to do this. Calm yourself down. It works. Tell yourself it's going to be all right. What's the next thing mom says? You're going to right? Just breathe. Take a breath. Okay? This is a little bit more scientific than mom, but still the same thing. Has anybody military combat breathing? Anybody ever heard that term? It's the scientific version of the mom rule. They've studied it on soldiers, and it works. And what it is it's basically a slow, controlled inhale through the nose. At the top, you hold for 2 seconds. And then it's a slow, controlled exhale through the mouth. Hold at the bottom of the exhale for, let's say 2 minutes. I did say 2 seconds. There's 2 minutes. We're all going to be on the floor. All right? That's done. Hold for 2 seconds and repeat. So in through the nose, full breath, hold for 2 seconds. Slow, controlled exhale through the mouth. Hold for 2 seconds and repeat. Studies on soldiers have shown that this has been able to lower their heart rate to 20 to 30 beats per minute. And it does work. If anybody does cardio, I do this all the time. I'm huffing away like everybody else on the arc trainer at the gym. But I'll slow my breathing, even not as controlled as this, but just slowing your breathing down and through the nose and mouth, all right, lowers your heart rate. But 20 to 30 beats per minute, if you remember our chart, can bring you, all right, from that gray zone back into that red zone, or that red zone into that yellow zone, so you can keep that mind going, all right, keep that human brain as long as possible. Shift your emotions. Anybody think anger is a great emotion? Can it be a great emotion? All right. Anger at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon going into a holiday weekend at I-275 and I-4 in downtown Tampa. Good place to be angry? No. But what about a fight for your life? What about if somebody's trying to kill you? Can we use that anger and shift that into courage and into this isn't going to happen? Yes. So shift your emotion, whatever your positive emotion, whether you need to be angry, or confident or whatever, shift your emotion to whatever emotion will work for you. And lastly, stay fit, healthy, because obviously a healthier heart beats at a slower beat per minute. So we want to stay to that 60 to 90 beats per minute at all times. Another thing we can do, we can script and we can practice, all right? Which basically, probably a lot of people don't do that. Has anybody ever been in the kitchen in here? A few people. Okay. Has everybody ever been in the kitchen down at Applebee's down here? But we know there's a back door, right? Do we ever think that I can use that if I have to? Right? Just like those people at the station nightclub bar, and I have to be honest, folks, I'm guilty too. Because as officers, police officers, we look more at people before we taught this class, right, Jason? Right? Who catches our eye? The shifty guy in the corner, right? The guy with the bag. All right? I have to be honest, I'm a huge fan of concerts and plays and Broadway and activities and going to larger events. Until I started teaching this class, I looked at people. I never looked at exits. I never thought, well, what would I do? I always thought, what would I, I want to be closer to this guy because I want to, but I never looked at exits. So we can script and practice, have that plan in place. Remember, like Amanda Ripley said, if we have that plan in place and we process through denial and deliberation to decide what we're going to do, we get there faster, we're more likely to survive. What do the flight attendants always say on the flight? The closest exit may be, right? Guarantee if we're all on a plane, well, maybe hopefully not after today, but if you're on a plane and something happens and there has to be expedient evacuation, can you guarantee me that there's probably going to be somebody with an exit behind them going forward? Because they came in through that front door, just like the station nightclub fire. So have some plans in place. Script practice. Don't panic. Don't be afraid to go to Walmart. Don't be afraid to go to Applebee's. Just have a plan in place. What would I do if? Right? Because here in Florida, nobody mistakes the gas for the brake and plows into the front of a building, right? Nobody. What's in the front of a lot of the stores now? Propane tanks. All right? Car hits those propane tanks and catch on fire. Who's going out the front door? Right? We're looking for another exit. So rather than being panicked and looking around, where should we go? Take that little second when you walk in and say, what should I do? Where would I go? We're going to look at a couple of scripters and practicers. Rick Rescorla, has anybody ever heard of this gentleman? If you want to Google him, there's a short documentary on YouTube and some of the other places called The Man That Predicted 9/11. Rick Rescorla was an English-born citizen who served in the English military. Police officer, military police officer in Rhodesia, immigrated to the United States. Is it immigrated if you come from England? I guess it is, I'm not really sure. But he came to the United States, served in the military, the U.S. military, in the U.S. Army during Vietnam. Saw a lot of action in the Ai Drang Valley, which was a highly conflicted area during the Vietnam War. Did several civilian jobs, and eventually landed as the Director of Security for Morgan Stanley Dean Winter on the World Trade Center. 23 floors, 2,700 employees. Mr. Rescorla was so convinced that the Trade Center, because of its, not only its physical feature, but its mentality of what a lot of people, when you think of the United States, the Statue of Liberty, right, the Twin Towers, things like that, power, strength, power, money, knew they were going to be attacked. Actually, they did a security survey, and identified the garage as the most likely place to attack. Now remember, the World Trade Centers were attacked twice. Originally with a car bomb, which he told them they needed to shore up their security. They didn't. Luckily, that wasn't a major event there as far as killing people or destruction. But he was so convinced they were going to fly planes into the towers as the next terrorist event that he tried to get the executives of Morgan Stanley to move to a lower footprint, a lower building in New Jersey. And before 2001, did anybody ever fathom about 9/11? He did. They did. They said, you're crazy, it's not going to happen. No way. But they did allow him to run mandatory evacuation drills. And from people that survived, which was roughly all but 6 employees of Morgan Stanley team leader that day, when they talked about them with about Mr. Rescorla, they said he had a bullhorn, he was yelling out orders. But what did he do? What did he do? He gave Patty Nielsen the plan, the librarian from Columbine. He gave these employees a plan that they didn't know they needed, but it was in place. So 9/11 happens. They had 2,700 employees on 22 floors, 23 floors. All but 6 got out. Yeah, all but 6. They're up to 1. Do you think that they had that plan in place? How popular do you think Mr. Rescorla was on September 10th? Not very popular, right? Women with your high heels. Why are you looking at me? I'm just because I'm looking at you, right? You wear the you wear the comfortable shoes to work if you work in the urban areas, and then you put on the pretty shoes, right? Because you have that nice, that nice business attire on, right? All the people there, the managers who Morgan Stanley deemed winner, their only job is to make money, correct? They don't process anything, they don't make anything, they make money. So not real popular, but that day they all got out. Unfortunately for Mr. Rescorla, he felt that he had bigger responsibilities than just his employees and went back in after they were all had escaped the building, and he perished when the South Tower collapsed. But he put that plan in place. He had that foresight. He gave them the plan that Patty Nielsen didn't have. We're going to give you the plan today. So the script practice, just have it in the back of your mind. All right, every day is not going to be a 9/11, thankfully, and every day is not going to be an active shooter. But if we have a plan in place, what if it is the day? Not a panic plan, not carrying a survival bag wherever you go, but just having a plan in place in order to utilize it if something happens. And then we're going to listen to the actual cockpit recording between Captain Sully and the Miracle on the Hudson, between him and the air traffic controller. Listen to how quickly Captain Sully goes through denial and into his deliberation phase. And more importantly, listen to some of the denial still in the air traffic controller, still giving him directions back to LaGuardia and other airports when Sully's already, we're going into Hudson. But listen to how calm he is and think, did this gentleman have a plan in place for this event before the birds hit those enemies?
It's 1539, birds, 6, swamps, that towards LaGuardia. Okay, you need to return a little buddy. Turn left heading at about 220. 220. Copy the departure, got emergency returning. It's 15.9. He third strike, he lost all engine, he lost the thrust in the engine, he was turning immediately. It's 15.29, which engine? He lost thrust in both engines, he said. Got it. Active 15.9. Could you get it, Steve? Do you want to try to land 1 and 1 break? I got you 15.9, could you left traffic to runway 31? Unable. Okay, what do you need to land? Got you 15.9, runway 4 is available. Do you want me to left traffic to runway 4? You're going to be runway down. What's the word 2 are right? Anything in New Jersey, maybe Peterborough? Okay, you're off your right side at Peterborough Airport. Do you want to try to go to Peterborough? Yes. Peterborough, Empire. Actually, we're going to park down emergency inbound. Got you 15.9, turn like 280 to land runway 1 at Peterborough. We can't do it. Okay, which runway would you like at Peterborough? We're going to be I'm sorry, say again, Captain 15.9, never contact this law. You also got Newark Airport up to 2 o'clock in about 7 miles. You can fly 4718, General St. 210.
4718. I think he said he's going in the Hudson.
That's where he went, right? Little different. The air traffic controller was still controlled, still professional, but still in denial. He was giving them directions, you know, hey, do you want to go here, you want to go there? I think at that point, Sully's probably created the biggest wake that the Hudson River has ever seen, right? But let me ask you a question, folks. Do you think that U.S. Airways and Southwest lets their pilots, you know, it's not a crash, it was a water landing, as you recall, practice this? Maybe in a flight simulator, but they're certainly not going to let them actually physically practice landing planes in the water, because that's one and done, right? On a multi-million-dollar aircraft. But do you, listening to that cockpit reporting, yes, Sully was a highly experienced military fighter trained pilot as well. But do you think he had a plan in place long before he even taxied down the runway? Right? Probably a guy like him, he probably had a plan in place for almost every situation, for probably every airport and everything that could go wrong with an airplane. And he put it into place. You saw how quickly, just like the cameraman, he went past that denial and right into what am I going to do? So having that plan in place, we see how important it is to survival. We're going to take a quick break. We'll say 10. We'll give you 10. That means 15, no more. And then we'll resume. Which I think is good.
Yeah,
We're going to address that in part 2. We're going to address all that in part 2. Yes. Yeah, I saw Monday night. He's still very active in the FOP. Yeah, he's still very active in the FOP, so. Okay. Yeah, no, he's still around. But he's still active in our so I just thought that he was one that are well, we're available for questions after we will run it.
Yeah, I thought I'd lay down for a bit.
Just a heads up, we'll start in about 2 minutes, so if you want to make your way back.
We heard some people got tea times they need to make, so we need to start back up.
Okay, everybody, we're going to start the second session. So if we could please take our seats, that would be wonderful. I didn't want to tell you this ahead of time, but we are live streaming this. And we are going to be putting this up on our Facebook and YouTube channel. So if you are really getting a lot out of this and you want to share it with your very loved family members who are not with us, you could give them the link so that they could share this information. So we want this to spread far and wide, all these great things that they're telling us to do, okay? If anybody needs help with that, come to the office. We can help you with that. We're live streaming currently. John will have it up onto YouTube and Facebook probably by this evening. So thank you so much for your attention, and now on to part 2. Oh, where'd they go? There they are.
All right. So if you're not back, raise your hand. Perfect. All right. Jimmy was off the stage, so I'm going to try to come down here because I don't like being up higher. So again, we're going to start the second half. We're going to really get into the meat and potatoes of the morning, not evening. But like any good class, we have teachers out there anywhere, former teachers.
Teachers, raise your hands. Come on,
Yeah.
right here.
Always have to give a definition, right? So here we go. So an active attacker, an active shooter. I don't want you to get hung up on the word shooter, okay? Because it does not have to be with a firearm, all right? It can be anything. So the active attack event is an attempted mass murder. Someone attempting to kill a multitude of people. The actual FBI definition is one or more persons attempting to kill a multitude of people in a small confined area. It's going to be important. You're going to hear that a lot in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Do not get hung up on shooter, because it can be somebody with a van trying to crash into bystanders. It can be a bomb. It can be a knife. It can be anything like that. So the profile for the attacker, there's absolutely no profile. It could be a man, it could be a woman, any financial background, any religious background, any ethnic background. It does not matter. All of them have an avenger mindset. They feel like society has wronged them, and they're going to get back at society and commit this ultimate crime and get their name in lights. It says up there, some broadcast. I would venture to guess that probably a good 90% of them say something, do something prior to committing this ultimate crime. Heck, Columbine High School, those two actually put a video out of exactly what they were going to do for film class. So what is very important, and I have been to several conferences, and I have met a gentleman by the name of Phil Chalmers. If you look him up, he is the resident expert on serial killers and why teens kill. He has interviewed every single mass murderer who survived their crime and went to prison and found out what makes them tick. And one thing he said every single one of them feared was the fear of failure, of not accomplishing their goal. So if they felt that they were going to be stopped or somebody knew about it ahead of time, they weren't going to commit their crime. All right? So it's very, very important if we see something, hear something that just doesn't sound right, we get the proper authorities, the proper personnel involved to get in their face and say, hey, we know there's a problem. So some of those risk factors that we want to look out for. Now, if you know someone that's some of these risk factors, it does not mean they're going to be a mass murderer. All right? But it's definitely somebody we need to get help for and get the proper people involved in their life. So if they have a history of violence, and that does not mean that they are the one committing the violence. Were they in an abused home, sexually abused, mentally abused, physically abused, violence of some form that they've been involved in. Exposure to violence. I don't know about you, but you can watch almost any TV program, any video game that's out there, and everybody's playing, and the music today has a lot of violent tendencies in it. So if someone is completely exposed and into those things, definitely a risk factor to pay attention to, specifically if they have a history of violence. Substance abuse and dependence. Obviously, if you start adding substances to someone that has a history of violence and a predisposed notion of violence, you add chemical that lowers their inhibition, chances of violence goes up, correct? Mental illness. Mental illness in itself is not a violent issue, okay? However, when you have mental illness coupled with a history of violence, exposure to violence, and substance abuse, that starts to put it through the roof. That's when mental illness can become violent. And a history of suicidality is very important. If somebody is suicidal, has been suicidal in the past, and they have no hope for their life, do they care what happens to anyone else? So that's definitely somebody we need to get proper therapy, proper counselors, or whatever involved. And if there is some form of homicidal stuff, we need to get the proper authorities involved as well. If these risk factors continue, and we have some of these behaviors that start, we want to know what's going on with them in their life. Because obviously, if you're stalking, harassing, and threatening, you are you're going down a road that probably can't be stopped at this point. We need to get the proper authorities and counselors involved. Negative family dynamics and support system. Chances are these individuals don't have much support, if any at all, and if they do have some, it's probably not good. All right? So negative family dynamics, if they start to isolate or they're just completely unstable, and they're doing this with a history of violence and everything that we just talked about, definitely something to look for. And it says others are concerned. Usually, there's always somebody that said, you know, little Johnny, little Susie has been doing something really weird. And we are concerned about it, but we don't ever go the next step and get the proper people involved. So, see something, say something. Goes for more than just crime in your community, for burglaries and stuff like that. It goes for these kind of incidents too. You want to get the people involved because they fear failure when they come up with their plan. Okay, so the next slide, you can go ahead and let it go, is not a political statement in any way, shape, or form. However, this is going to be a map, you can populate it. Some people call it the popcorn slide. It's from the year 2000, so 1 year after Columbine High School, till 2018. These are all the events that have occurred in the United States where there was an attempted mass murder. Now, this excludes gang activity, excludes a crime of something else where multiple people got harmed or killed in it. The yellow dots are going to be gun violence. with the attempted mass murder. Small ones are 0 to 4 were killed. The big ones are 4 plus. Red are knives. Again, 0 to 4, 4 plus. And then blue is a car was utilized for attempted mass murder. I'm going to let this kind of go. As you can see, it populates a little bit faster as time goes on because of the frequency of how they're occurring. So in 18 years, 316 events. How many of those have you heard of? Probably about a handful, right? And most of the time at this point, I say, depending on who you want to hang out with, Deputy Dean is going to Maine because he likes lobster, and I'm moving to Montana. And anybody that's looking down at Hawaii as a safe spot, they've had 2?
Well, at least one.
At least one since this came out. So Hawaii's often will charge for you, so forget that. But no, this is up here to show you that if it can happen in a one-room schoolhouse in Amishville, Pennsylvania, it can happen anywhere. All right? It's not here. We're not here to scare you. We're here to prepare you for it to happen, and you never have to use it. All right? The location of where these are occurring. As you can see here, about 52% of the time, it's the commerce areas. Where you're going to church, where you're going to grocery store, theaters, malls. I don't know if malls exist anymore, but malls, places where you're doing your everyday business, 52% of the time is where these are occurring. Educational institutions, your school system is barely 25%. It's not a school issue. It's an anywhere, anytime issue. Outdoors, obviously, small confined area with a multitude of people. Kind of hard to do unless you have a music venue outside of a big building in Vegas, right? So, and the other, I'm not really 100% sure what that is, but obviously it's where you're doing your daily business the majority of the time. The attacker connection to the location where it occurs. Just over 50% of the time do they even care where it happens. Do they have a connection to where it happens? So just because they're mad at church does not mean it's going to be at church. Right? Just because they're mad at work doesn't mean it's going to be at work. They're going to find what? The small confined area with a multitude of people, because they want the more bang for their buck, for less of a lack of a better term, right? A lot of people don't realize the Sandy Hook shooter, the elementary school was not his first target. That
was an accidental.
His first target was actually...
It was accidental twice, they saw it. Sorry.
And I even recruited him. His first target was not the elementary school. His first target was actually a local high school. Why? What day was it? Friday. What happens on Fridays? Pep rallies, right? But what stopped him from hitting the high school? Who do you think he saw in the parking lot of that school? An armed police officer, resource officer. Fear of failure. Moved to the soft target. Guess his mom did work there at some point. But that was not his reason for hitting that location. So just remember, the location does not matter to them. It matters the ultimate goal. So we're going to go over some of the incidents that you may have heard about. We're going to talk about some stats and how we can look at these and realize the different factors involved. UC Santa Barbara, California, 2014. Deputy Dean has the stats on this one.
They call this an attack of pure evil because it was a triple threat. The attacker killed 3 people by stabbing them at his residence off campus. Then he proceeded to the campus where he shot people with a gun and left the campus driving over people in the streets in a vehicle.
So this is a trifecta, right? Gun, car, knife. Trifecta. He didn't care what he used. He's going to kill people, right? So how about Orlando, Florida? 2016 Pulse nightclub.
This was an Islamic-inspired terrorist who attacked the nightclub with a firearm. He killed 49 people before eventually being engaged by law enforcement.
Again, Islamic terrorist. Still something we have to be cognizant of. It's not gone. Just because we're out of the area and all that stuff, it's still a threat. There's still those little isolated groups that are around the United States that may be sympathetic to that cause. So still something we have to think about. Las Vegas, Nevada, 2017.
This was a single gunman who barricaded himself in an elevated hotel room from Mandalay Bay and started shooting at concert goers outside of the hotel with a high-powered rifle. Luckily, he killed himself before he expended all of his rounds, because when they eventually breached the hotel room that he was in, he had thousands of rounds of unspent ammunition still left, but he did manage to kill 59 people, making it the highest mass casualty event since 9/11. They did a deep dive into him. This is the anomaly. He had no connection to anybody at the concert, no connection to the hotel. There was no financial, no family stress, there was nothing that the FBI did in years. This was years of deep diving into his history. There is nothing to link him to this shooting.
So there's the anomaly, right? Just the one you can't account for that does things for unknown reasons, and we'll never know. But again, New York City, New York, 2017.
This was a lone attacker. He used a rented Home Depot pickup truck to run over people on a bicycle pedestrian path in New York City, and he managed to kill 8 people and wounded an additional 15 with the vehicle.
There's a vehicle assault on bystanders. Sutherland Springs, Texas, 2017.
This was a lone gunman. He started shooting people outside of the church, which attracted the attention of a neighbor. He proceeded inside the church and continued to kill parishioners. From reported survivors, they were huddled underneath pews or praying, and he just methodically went throughout the interior of the church shooting people. They said the only time he stopped firing was to reload his gun. The neighbor that saw him eventually engaged in him, causing him to flee, and he was stopped several times away by law enforcement and taken into custody.
So the one thing this one is in here for is because they were huddled in there not doing anything. And that's why we're teaching you to do something other than huddle in the corner and hope. And we're going to go over that in a few minutes. But Edmond, Oklahoma, 1986. Anybody remember this? There was a phrase coined for this. You remember the phrase? Going postal, absolutely.
Yes, this was a lone postal employee. He killed 14, wounded an additional 6 within the building prior to killing himself.
You guys get a gold star because most of the time you teach this and not one person knows what I'm talking about. So the reason why I left this in the program was, what is the year? 1986, right? When was Columbine? 1999. So this is way before Columbine High School that this was a problem. This is actually history teachers. You got it? First active shooter in a school was in the 1800s. This is not a new problem. This is a problem that's happening more frequently because of the World Wide Web and social media and 24-hour news coverage. All right? So this isn't something new. This is something they didn't wake up on Snapchat and decide, let's start shooting places up. This is something that's been happening for centuries. So, during any of these incidences, the number of deaths that occur during one of these active mass murder, attempted mass murders, the number of deaths are determined by two main factors. Is how quickly law enforcement arrives on scene and gets involved with the subject, coupled with how many targets the individual has at their disposal between that time frame. And that is where we're going to be talking about eliminating the target availability, where you all come into play. So, who can tell me, or who thinks they know, the average response time nationwide for law enforcement to an attempted mass murder? Now, and I want you to remember, before you start shooting out numbers at me, some of the times it's going to be a rural area, where it's going to take a little bit of time to get boots on the ground, probably 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on where you are. Or there could be a pretty urban area where boots on the ground within a couple seconds, right? So, national average response time to attempted mass murder. What we got? 3 minutes. Have you guys watched this before?
I didn't even fast forward by accident. Not blame me on this one.
All right, the national average is 3 minutes. So good job, another gold star. That's 2. That's pretty fast. That's pretty fast for law enforcement response time to almost anything, right? And you cannot expect us to respond to anything much quicker than 3 minutes. But what can happen in 3 minutes? A lot. That's where your response. I heard it.
You're the one that told me to click on it.
Whatever, I know.
That's your own fault.
I heard it. Anyways, there's supposed to be gunshots. Yeah, okay. Anyways, we don't want to deny what we heard, that we heard gunshots. Thank you. Someone's got a sense of humor today. We don't want to deny that we heard gunshots. We want to go straight into our deliberation and what we're going to do with our civilian response. Now, we're about to watch a video. Maybe. Okay. This is Christina Anderson. Christina Anderson is a survivor of the first Virginia Tech shooting. She's going to tell you her experience and the tactics she used that day. Subtitle kind of gives it away. But, and once she's done talking about her experience, we're going to discuss whether that is a viable option for you.
The first shot's around 9:40 a.m. I was sitting on the wall of the classroom, so in the hallway, and you hear the shots getting closer and closer very quickly. And there was only a few seconds between the first and the when we actually walked in. To me, it sounded like an axe being taken to a piece of wood. And our teacher, she opened the door, and she peered outside, and she immediately shut the door, and she said, "Call 911." And right then, he walked in just seconds after. There's absolutely no time to think or to duck or to take cover. People just kind of fell to the floor. And he immediately walked in shooting, and he went to the other side of the classroom, and he started going down the rows. He went down each row very quickly, very purposefully. And I remember thinking, your turn is coming. You're going to get shot. I mean, I didn't realize I was an active shooter, but I knew something bad was happening. He came back to our classroom 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he killed himself in front of the class. In between each time he was there, you could just hear people crying and coughing, and the cell phone started ringing. When he was in our class, I remember trying not to breathe very much, so he couldn't tell us about it. because as my son was hitting the chair, I was thinking, you know, he can see me breathing, he can see me alive, and I was very scared. I'll never forget when the SWAT team first broke in, around 9:51. The officer in the front of the classroom said, "We have a lot of blacks in here." And at the time, I couldn't comprehend what he was talking about, but he meant triage codes. And I remember looking into the girl to my right and realizing what black meant. He looked over me and he said, first he said yellow, and then he changed it immediately. He said red, and that's when I first started panicking. I still couldn't speak. I was shot 3 times, lying on my back, and I was thinking, what do you see? Like, what can you see on me that I can't, that you would change me from yellow to red? He killed 12 people in my classroom, including our teacher.
So again, you just heard Christina tell you that playing dead, she was shot 3 times. I don't know about you. I don't want to get shot once. All right? I believe without a shadow of a doubt that the reason why she survived was by the grace of God, and to tell you, do not do that. All right? Now, at the beginning of this presentation, I said that avoid, deny, defend is the new terminology that we like to put out there instead of run, hide, fight. The reason why is the same exact reason why playing dead is not good for you. We always want you to better your position during the event. We don't want you to stop thinking once you're in a location where you're preventing someone from coming in. That's why we don't like the word hide. Because if you hide in a metal file cabinet and the gunman finds you, what do you have next? Hope he doesn't kill you. Right? And I'd rather you always be trying to get to the next step, whether that's a defend, whether that's to avoid or deny another location that is safer. And never stop thinking and just not hiding and hoping. We will revisit Virginia Tech in a little bit to show you why avoid, deny, defend is a good method for you to utilize. And I'm going to let Deputy Dean go into detail.
All right, we remember in the beginning where we have our denial, deliberation, our decisive moment. So we've already gotten past denial. We've already realized that we need to have a plan in place. What are we going to do? So these are our deliberation, our decisive moments. And this is where avoid, deny, defend comes into place. So we're going to break each one of those down and tell you, basically give you some options on some best case scenarios of what you should do. We're going to watch some videos along the way. And during some of these videos, we're going to point out some stuff. It's not to make fun of anybody. It's just basically to analyze it and say, are there some better ways that we can do this? Okay. The first video we're going to watch is from the Bay County, Florida, school board shooting in Panama City. To set the stage for us a little bit, a gunman comes in, he's upset, the audio's not super good, he's upset about his wife being terminated from the school board, she's an employee in the school. He's also upset about a tax that the board has recently passed. You'll hear him off camera, he paints with spray paint, you'll hear the spray paint, he spray paints a vendetta symbol on the wall, and then he tells everybody, if you're basically everybody in the audience, not the people behind the board members behind the desk, hit the road to get out. So he gives them the order to avoid. We're going to watch how quickly, you'll see at the top of the screen how quickly the first gentleman is like, yeah, you told me to avoid, I'm getting out. But let's watch some of the delay, and Jason will stop it partway through, and we'll discuss it real quick before we finish it.
It's on the instructors you have there, and it's part of the plan we have. The workshop we're going to have following this meeting. This will be the first step in that whole process. I have a motion. Everybody in this room. Hit the road.
He pulls the gun out and he tells them, everybody else except for the board members, hit the road. We see how quickly the gentleman near the top of the screen behind that woman with the black coat on, how quickly he does it quick. Kind of gives a glance to make sure he's not going to get shot in the back, and out he goes. Look at the time frame. He's already out of the picture. We got others that aren't even out of their seats, and then you watch them grab their stuff. All right? Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing worth your life in that purse or in that briefcase. I know we all, I can't live without my cell phone. All right? Yes, you can. That's a figure of speech. If you have the opportunity to avoid a threat, man-made or natural, who's going to stand out in the middle of a tornado? Right? What do? We avoid it. If a car pulls out in front of you, do you have enough time to do something? What do? Right? We hit our brakes, we swerve around it. We don't just drive into it. Okay? Avoid is the best defense that you can if it's safe to do so. We'll let this play out.
Hey, sir. John is going to talk. He's going to talk. John, go ahead. Yes. Can we talk for a minute? Just one person. Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? Because I really don't want you to talk about me. Very honest with you. I have no idea. She's fired. I believe that. She said that. But what did she do? Well, then, you didn't stop this a little bit. Where did she work in school? Just tell me some company. No, you say that. Oh, come on in. Now, school say y'all. Come on in. You got a real down there? Come on in. I'm going to wait there. He probably doesn't have to. Tell me what she did. Her call the producers. I know that is not. Part of what? Sir, I don't know what you bring in. Stop taxes, okay? You said we don't need no taxes. No, it's not any money. Then as soon as you got in the school system, then you turned around and said, oh, now we need to have some sales tax in. I said we need to have some sales tax in the very beginning. I said I can't pay on that. No, you said that. You can look at the material. I said from the beginning, you have some sales taxes because equitable money, because everybody pays, not just property owners. But listen, here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want anybody to, just listen to me for a minute. I don't want anybody to get hurt, and I've got a feeling that what you want is to possibly come in and kill you because you're mad, because you said you're going to die with me. But why? This isn't worth it. This is a problem. Please don't. Please don't. Please. All I'm doing
I hear a lot of oohs and ahs during that. And there's a lot that went wrong, a lot we can learn from this video. Ginger, we gotta admire her spunk with the purse. I see a purse over there. Is that yours? That gunman, you can tell from the video, is a pretty decent sized individual. I'm a good sized individual, obviously. Anything in that purse that would knock me out. Alright, so not saying that she did something wrong, but could she have done something better? We're going to discuss that, how to defend yourself. And I heard more oohs and ahs, right? Ginger's friend, right? She was told to get out. Why the hell is she still even in there? And then going closer to the gunman. And you see it, I don't know if you see it, but I've watched this obviously hundreds of times. You see his body language, his frustration. You see it when the chairman of the school board starts arguing with him. He's deranged, obviously, correct? And has a gun. Are we going to argue with him about what platform we ran on? So, stress, right? That heart rate going up, all right? But there's a lot of wrongs there. But the part to that video is avoid to get out. When they interviewed the wife, she said even though he was a convicted felon, he shot firearms all the time, and that she considered him a very good shot. He could have killed everybody in that room. Luckily for everybody in that room, he was suicidal and not homicidal. Because a lot of people didn't do things right or didn't have the game plan in place on how to address that situation. We're going to give you that today. So, he told them to get out. If you can get out safely, get out. Know your exits. So he said we talked about, these doors and main doors that you came in, the doors from the station light caught fire. All right. But we also talked about going to Applebee's and knowing there's kitchen doors, knowing your exits. The primary exit might not be the first one. And lastly, there's a time to call 911, and it's when you're safe. Whether you barricaded yourself in a room and you've done everything you can, or you delegate duties while you're barricading, you call 911. But do not do so until you're as safe as you can be. We're going to address that again. We're going to watch a quick video. This is from the Paris delicatessen attack, where the terrorist gunman goes into the delicatessen and starts shooting customers. This video is from the outside security camera. The important part, the first one you'll see is the gunman go in with an AK-47, which is a European-style assault rifle. But watch how quickly people start running out, avoiding the threat, and more importantly, watch even the people on the street, what they do when they see the gunman. Nothing goes in. Even the people on the street are running already. There we go, right? Does he stop and call 911? When you get around the corner and you're safe, that's when you call. I've never been to Paris, not yet. That's my future plans, retirement plans, go all over the world. But I don't know their mentality. But here in the U.S., where we live on our cell phones and our social media, especially the younger generation, we're going to know some fool that's going to stand right in front of that door, right, and live stream it, right, and do selfies and put a little emoji, shock faces up, all right? No, get out, get away. If you can avoid the threat, do not stand in front of the hurricane, okay? Do not stand in front of the tornado. Get out, get away, avoid the threat. The next one is a still picture. During the presentation part of this video, the training I did in, this is an actual video. For some reason, they didn't include the video, and I can't find it and couldn't get the link to play this. But on the video, you'll see two people. They kind of blend in, but at the back underneath the stairs, you see two people beneath those steps. Kind of, what are we doing? The hiding and hoping. The threat is out there. The shooter is beyond those doors. This is from a security camera footage of a shooting within a store. But when I went through the training, they said one of the individuals pushes on the door but does not hit the crash bar. So doesn't hit this bar over here. So what happens if I don't hit this bar? Well, bad example because this door is unlocked. But that door was locked. If you don't hit this on a locked door, it won't open. In his panic, we remember the woman trying to yank the child out of the stroller, right? They don't hit the crash bar, so theoretically they might be able to avoid it, but now they're just hanging out there. All right? But we talked about the main entrance you come in does not have to be your escape. Is there other ways? Can they go up? Can they go up into the attic, maybe get over into the next building and back down? Can they be at a better vantage point if they need to attack and defend themselves? Sitting there, like we heard from Christina, they're into the hide and hope, right? If that gunman comes in that door, what chance do they have? And we're going to talk, as this presentation continues, about how to properly defend yourself as well. Studies have shown locking the door is the single best deterrent to an active shooter entering the room you're in. We saw it in the staged video, all right? You see it in movies where they shoot through the door, all right? Most of the time, that's going to only be a shotgun, and 99% of the time, these shooters don't use shotguns, all right? Even if they do, if they shoot that door, we're going to hear about later what happens. But lock the door. Lights out and out of sight. Right? We saw it in the video, it's perfect. A shooter wants to be successful. They're not going to waste time in an empty room. They want to go to the place where the people are. So, and out of sight. Right? If this is the door right here, do I want to be here? Right? I do not. Has anybody ever had a law enforcement officer or police deputy show up at their house? Right? When you open the door, where were they? To the side. And that's why we do that, because we don't know what the element is. You don't want to be in front of that door. If possible, you want to be off to the side. We'll discuss a little bit more in a minute. Barricades. They work on all doors, but obviously inward opening doors are better. Meaning if you're in a room and the door opens into the room you're in, that is a door that you want to barricade. You can barricade any door, but obviously barricades work better if the gunman or the attacker is trying to push into the room you're in. So the heavier, what can be used? Anything, right? Tables, vending machines, you know, the piano, but it's on wheels. Can we lock it? Same thing with a soda machine or a refrigerator. A lot of them are easy to wheel around. And if you tip it over or twist it the other way, anything that's heavy can be used as a barricade. The more, the better. I'm not going to discuss door stops because for some reason we have a slide just for door stops. But once again, what could these people be working on? Look at the door. All right. First of all, is there things you can put in front of that door? To at least they have, you know, probably. I'm thinking, right? Why do generally people put things in front of doors? Because they lock, right? So, oh, it's such a why do people in stores put stuff? Because it's a pain to have to unlock it and lock it and go get the key, right? So the door probably locks. That's probably why they have the box in there. But what could they be doing instead of hiding in the corner, hoping that the gunman doesn't shoot them? All right, you have those storage racks, right? What could they do? Could they put those in front of the door? Could they at least block the entry in there? There's ways you can protect yourself. So lock those doors, secure those doors, whichever way you can. Door stops. Like I said, we have our own slide. All right? Very inexpensive. They work great, but they have to be the right material. All right? Like a homemade wooden door stop, a lot of times, doesn't work really good on a smooth floor like this or a tile floor, right? Works better on carpet. Rubber might be better. For you people that go to places all the time, if you go to a church group or a prayer group or you have an office or something and the door doesn't lock, or even if it does lock, all right, what's it to have a cheap 99-cent door stop available? But just make sure it's the right material door stop for the right floor material so it gets some grip so it can't just be pushed open. Outwardly opening doors, which are similar to these. They open away. You can still barricade those, but are they going to be as successful? No, because the door opens out. But at the same time, if all you have is tables and chairs and whatnot, it's at least going to slow the attacker down. It's going to take their eye off the prize, which is you, right? They're going to have to concentrate. They might have to take a hand off the gun, move stuff, climb out of the way. Maybe that gives you time to defend yourself. Maybe it gives you time to get through, out, another exit. But we saw it in the video, and I never even thought of it, but the tactical cinch. When you wrap it up, I don't know if you can see it, but you have those scissors right above the doors, and you see them on the back, all of these doors, right? A lot of these doors can't be opened. They need that Allen, or they can't be locked. They need that Allen key, right? We don't have one of those. But if we wrap something around the top of those hinges on those doors, and we wrap it in something tight, not something rubbery, not a bungee cord, but, an audiovisual cable, an extension cord, a belt, a leather belt, anything that's not going to give. If you wrap it tight enough around those, where you stop those hinges at the very top of the doors, okay, they won't open. They sell commercial ones that you can just walk up and slide over them, and they work as well. They have inside rubber so they don't just slide off. They have a rubbery gripping material. But you don't need something like that. If you're in an office or somewhere where you have those, if you want to go that route, yes, you can. But anything can be used. And the same thing we saw, all right, inwardly opening doors with the tactical cinch of holding that door. All right, gunman, right, attacker probably got a hand on the gun. They're going to put the gun on the ground and, you know, do a tug of war with that door. They might shoot through that door out of frustration. But look where that gentleman is. He's off to the side. All right, that door, who's going to win that tug of war? Who's going to stop that? That gentleman right there is going to keep somebody from coming in that room. And even if shots come through that door out of frustration, they're going to miss him. And we'll see how that works when we break down the Texas Tech shooting that Christina Anderson was in. I'm sorry, Virginia Tech. What did I say, Texas? All right, and like I said, if you have an office or someplace you go, can you get your own lock? Or can you have maintenance install one? If your door doesn't easily lock, something like this is very simple. You keep it right by the door, so even when your heart rate goes up, you're not fumbling for a little key or an Allen wrench or whatever. You walk over, there's a stop at the bottom of that, so that red locking device can't go all the way through. You drop it in, that door is locked. All right, nobody's going to get through that door. Once again, though, outwardly opening door, away from the room you're in. So, we decide that we can no longer avoid it. Okay, it's safer to stay in the room we're in. Okay, we've barricaded it, we've locked the doors. Are we done yet? No, we still need to be in that proper position, right? People say, why should I go close to a gun? You're going to see why in a couple of slides, why it's important, so I'm not going to go too depth into that. But you want to be close enough to be able to grab that knife and be in a position, or that gun, all right, to be off, not in front of that door in case they see you if there's glass or even if it's solid and the rounds come through. You want to be close enough to fight, all right, close enough to grab the gun, close enough to defend yourself, all right? Have a weapon. What can be used as a weapon? Anything, right? Remember, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the one plane that went down during 9/11, right? They were getting pots of hot water ready to throw on the terrorists, all right? Fire extinguishers, okay? Anything, all right? It's the Bible, all right? But what's better? If you're small and frail and all that, punching somebody or hitting somebody with something, having something in your hand. The centerpiece is on the table. Anything that can be used. And we talked once again about shifting your emotions. All right? You don't want that I'm going to die emotion. You want that I'm going to live at all costs. Nobody is going to stop me from whatever. And whatever motivates you. The upcoming trip, the new grandchild on the way, somebody's wedding. It doesn't matter. Whatever motivates you to survive and fight for your life and get home to your loved ones, your responsibilities, whatever motivates you, use that to strengthen this. Because fighting is not just here, it's here. And we're going to hear about it in a second. This video is tremendous. This is inside. This is an attacker. There's a gunman up at the front of the store where the gentleman is looking. At first I think he's given up, right? You'll watch him. He grabs a bottle. I'm like, at least he's going to have a drink before he goes down. But watch how he prepares himself. But also at the end, watch what happens at the top of this aisle. And we'll discuss it. Some people are already working on avoiding. We can play it one more time, Jay. Now, when he flips it upside down, he means business, right? He's no longer in drinking mode. He's in fighting mode, correct? Who do you want to be? If that gunman comes around, okay, who do you want to be? Do you want to be ready for the fight, or do you want to hope the gunman doesn't want to kill you? Because she has nothing. I believe it's a she. I don't want to characterize, but that person has nothing right now with that. Hope I don't be shot in the back. Okay? What about social proofing too? If somebody would have just encouraged her, maybe they did, maybe she just didn't have it in her. But if somebody would have grabbed her and told her, she probably would have went with them. But I don't want to be that person, and I don't want you to be this person. We talked about the mental fight. This Lieutenant Brian Murphy, he was the first responding officer to the Sikh temple shooting in Wisconsin. As soon as he got out of his car, the gunman engaged him from several hundred feet away with a high-powered AK-47 European-style assault weapon, made for battlefield soldiers. All right, very accurate, very deadly. Okay, he was one of the first rounds that got fired at him as he was getting out of the car. He got out of his car, he grabbed the sidearm. It was the only firearm he had. He was a supervisor. There were no long guns, what we call long guns, rifles and shotguns in the car. So all he had was his pistol on him. As soon as he got out of the car and the rounds started coming at him from several hundred feet away, rifle versus pistol, who's going to be more accurate? The rifle is one of the first rounds hit him in the hand, disabling his shooting hand, but unfortunately also damaging to the gun to the point where it wouldn't fire. He now has no defense. He now has zero, so he conceals himself as best as he could under the car. And while the gunman still continues to shoot at him, he has shot 16? 16, Jay's my number guy. 16 times. You see that large surgical scar on him. 16 times he was shot and lived to tell about it. But if you read about that, he kept that, right? He had something to live for. He kept that focus. Right? When they interviewed him later, he suffered that time dilation. He says, man, my God, when is this guy going to stop? The shooting seemed to go on forever. And then they say, he goes, as a side note, he goes, I also thought, man, my wife is going to kill me, because they had their vacation already scheduled to come to Florida. He knew he was shot enough times. Florida was going to be put on the back burner. But he kept his mind in it. He was physically out of the fight. He's not going to charge several hundred feet, all right, with no firearm, and that's instantaneous death. There's nothing he could do. But he kept his mind in the game, all right? So the mental part is just as important as the physical part. We talked about this room. We use this room, and this slide is for this. But if you can get out, get out. Remember, it doesn't need the exit you came in. Remember the flight attendant. The closest exit might be behind you. Doesn't have to be a door. Can it be a window? Can you break something? If your life is on the line, you're going to have some of that superhuman zone red strength. Can you break through something? Can you break through the social proof? Okay? Can you work on securing this door if you don't feel it's safe to go out while somebody else searches for another exit? Can you delegate? Remember what happened in London at the train station when somebody broke through the social proofing? Somebody who might not think to do something, when you tell them to do it, will probably, that's a great idea, I'm going to do that, right? So there's so many things we can do, because what you do matters. This is a breakdown of the slide. This gives us the meat and the potatoes of what to physically do during the fight. So the attack starts, right? The gunman comes into Panama City to the school board. Primary exits, if they're available. And we say primary exits, remember, it's not the exit you came in. It doesn't even have to be a door. Okay? But if you can get out and avoid that threat, avoid that fire, avoid anything. It's just like the car coming up the side road. We've driven all the time, most of us, right? We see that car coming from the side road. Doesn't look like it's going to stop, right? Do we keep going pedal to the metal? Right? We instinctively, right? We slow down, maybe we touch the brake, or we get over the other lane. We prepare in case that car doesn't start, that it doesn't stop. So we're already preparing ourselves. We need to do the same thing in an incident like this. So primary exits, if you can get out, all right? Doors, windows, secondary exits, it doesn't matter, get out. But if you can't get out, deny. Right? If we have to barricade ourselves in a room, we barricade ourselves. Lock the doors, windows out, barricades, tactical cinches, ropes, anything. Anything that you can do to secure those doors, use those. Can you work on secondary exits? Can you work on doing something else? Yes, look for other exits. Can you break through drywall if you're in an interior office room? All right, there's those drywall and the studs in between, right? In a moment when your accelerated heart rate is up here, can you break through that drywall? Maybe find another escape that way. Anything will work. Anything to get you away from the threat is your best defense at that time. You got other exits, use them, but what if there's no other exits? Have to defend yourself. Who knows the rule of a fight for your life? There's only one. What's that? What if you don't have a gun? All right? Win. Win at all costs. That is the only rule for a fight for your life. There's no such thing as playing fair. All right? Remember the vulnerable points of the body. Eyes, throat, groin area. All right? Attack with a feverish pitch like you don't even know you have. Okay? Anything can be used as a weapon because you're going home. All right? Nobody is going to stop you from going home. Nobody's going to stop you from living the rest of your life. All right? Attack like your life depends on it, because it does. We're going to talk about, this is an overview of Virginia Tech. This is the first attack on Virginia Tech. If you recall, just like the World Trade Center, there were 2 attacks at Virginia Tech. This is the first one that Christine Anderson was involved in. This is the overview of the campus. The gunman that shot Christine Anderson and all the fellow students and faculty in Norris Hall had killed people in a campus-affiliated housing before, so there was already a large police presence that day on campus because they were investigating that. And he went to Norris Hall. This is the actual door that he went into, and once he went into this door, he had with him a thick chain and a lock, and he chained the door from the inside. Why? Deputy Deso talked about it. All right? Locking that door does 2 things. It keeps the students in, so that's target availability. Who's it keep out? Responding law enforcement. So he's gearing up. Sad as is to say, this shooter is gearing up for his successful mission. He goes upstairs to the 2nd floor. You can tell by the layout. This is the actual floor that the rooms, and we're going to break each one down, where this actually occurred. You can see they're inwardly opening. They open inward into the room, into the classroom where the students and faculty are. So what would work best if you had the time, right? Besides locked doors, barricades. Right? Unfortunately, you're going to hear the breakdown of the room. Some people didn't have time, some people did, and we're going to see what happens. So this is a breakdown of the actual rooms involved in the shooting, okay?
All right, so room 206 was actually the first room attacked. He walked in, he started killing students, he returned later and shot more. You can see the red is deceased, the yellow is were injured, and the green were unharmed. So they had 0 amount of time to prepare for the shooter walking in. Room 207 was the second room attack. He walked in, he shot several students and a teacher. He then walked down the aisle shooting students. He left. The shooter attempted to return, however, the students...
You need to advance the slide.
Yeah, I haven't got there yet. All right. The students used their bodies to barricade the door. The shooter got the door open by about an inch. Several shots, but no one was hit by those rounds. As you can see there, only the ones closest to the door were killed, and then you had a lot of wounded in the room. Room 211, this is where Christina Anderson was. This is where the teacher heard the shots, told the students to call 911 and shut the door. He walked down the aisles, shooting students. He returned later and shot more students. There is absolutely nothing except them hiding under their desk playing dead. As you can see, 100% of that room was shot, and about probably 50 to 60% of them were killed in that room. Then we have room 204. This is Professor Livy Labriscu's room. He was a Holocaust survivor. When he heard the shots, he held the door shut, told the students to jump out the 2nd story window. He was shot through the door, killing him. Of the ones that did not get out, I believe only 2 of them were shot. And only 1 died. The rest of them escaped out the 2nd story window. And then we have room 205. Room 205, they heard the shots. They used their bodies, their feet to barricade the door by laying on the floor. Never made entry. He shot through the door, but no one was hit by those rounds. none of those individuals were hit.
Leave that up for 1 second. Now you remember Christine Anderson from her video, he went in there 3 times. First time, he returned. Second time, slow or methodical, looking for people that were breathing, finishing off the job he started. Right, came in a 3rd time, eventually killed himself. But 100% of the people were shot. You also heard her in the interview that she gave, where the teacher saw the gunman and said, call 911. Folks, is 911 going to help you right there? What's more important? Denying him access or avoiding or calling us? Because by the time we get there, you're going to be dead if you don't do anything else other than call us. All right? But you heard Professor Lebrescu. He didn't tell them to call 911. Told them to jump out the window. Seconds right, secondary exits. Like Jason said, all right, I don't want to get shot once, let alone 16 times. Okay? I'll take the broken ankle. I'll take the torn ACL over a gunshot going out that window. But that's when you call 911, when you're out and away from that building. And lastly, you see where what they did was that the students lied flat on their back and put their feet up against the door. So when he shot right over the top of them. So good positioning. But also breaking through the social proof, right? Do we think that every student came up with that great idea? Or did one person come up with that? But he gave the power to those other people, all right, to help, whether it was a student or a faculty, they don't break it down, but there were several of them with their feet up against the door, all right? So their weight, all right, made it impossible. A couple of frustration rounds in there, that's why we don't want to be in front of the door. Unfortunately for Professor Lebrescu, he sacrificed himself for his students. He had no other option at that point because he didn't have time to barricade the door. So he used his own body as the barricade. But we see what happens if you're not in the right position and those frustrated rounds come through. People say, why would we go closer to the gunman? Because look what happens when you do. When you take a proactive approach. When you say, I'm gonna be responsible for my own survival, okay? The numbers start going down. You see, the more times that he got into the room, the more people shot, the more people killed. But as they fought back, by denying him access, all right, you don't see in the first 3 rooms a great difference between the number of people being shot, but you start to see this. You start to see the survival rate, all right, going way down as people took a more proactive approach to their protection. We're going to watch a video in a minute. It's the tail end of the Panama City school board shootings when the police arrived. But just watch what you do when we arrive, because like I said, we're going to be entering a chaotic situation with not always the correct information. So I'm going to touch upon 2 things during this as well. Here in Hernando County, as well as many other places, well, you can actually text 911 and they will text you back. They're trained not to call you back. They will text you back, ask you to call, because obviously spoken word is quicker than text word unless you're a 14-year-old female. Then I think they text quicker than they speak. But you can still text 911. All right, and also I'm going to touch really quickly on concealed weapons permits. It is not our place to tell you yes or no, or get one, or don't get one, or carry a gun. I'm going to tell you 3 things. If you're going to get one, okay, be proficient, practice on it, train on it, know how to use it. All right, because if that heart rate goes up and you're not proficient at using a gun, chances are it's not going to protect you. You're going to be taken away. You're more likely to have it taken away from you and used against you if you don't know how to properly use a gun. Second of all, it's very easy to go to a range, all right, and stand there, pull a gun out, and shoot paper targets. We do it all the time to qualify, and actually they're changing our qualification now. But we go out, they make us run around, do jumping jacks, you know, all kinds of stuff. We shoot at night. They have the police lights going. You'd be surprising how quickly that nice little grouping, when you're standing there in daylight and just shooting like this at a target, goes from this to this with a little accelerated heart rate, a little stress. So practice with your gun. But if you do take a gun out in a situation like this, it's well within your legal right. Okay. Basically, Florida state statute says you have a right to defend yourself or others against imminent harm or death. Okay. But you are also responsible for all those guns, all those rounds that come out of that gun, just like we are. So if you're going to start shooting indiscriminately, okay, you can be civilly sued, you can be criminally charged, and you have to live with that. I know I don't want to live with taking an innocent person. I don't want to live with taking anybody's life, but especially an innocent person's life. So I will leave that up to you to seek your training and whether or not you feel it is appropriate for you all. But that is up to you. That's not a question for us to answer. But when we show up, if you do have a gun or you do have something at your earliest convenience, holster it, put it down, look less threatening, because you might have just been the hero and shot the gunman and saved the whole room full of people. But if you're waving that gun around when we come in, we're probably going to shoot you, and we're probably going to be justified in doing that. And once again, I don't want to live with that, but that's the price that could be paid if you don't know when to put that gun down. So at the earliest convenience, put that gun down, follow the hands. We like nothing in the hands. Put your cell phones down. How many times do we hear stories of people getting shot by police because they had a cell phone in their hand? It happens. We're susceptible to the elevated heart rate just like everybody else is. So look less threatening, don't move, get on the ground, follow directions. We're going to watch the tail end of the video. Just watch the different uniforms, but importantly, listen, we talk in very specific language. We don't say please and mother may I in a situation like this. We scream and yell and bark out commands and orders. A lot of different uniforms, right? But the language will always be the same. And an all hands on deck shooting, a mass casualty shooting, a school shooting, everybody from our department is going to be responding, especially the ones close to the area. We might have highway patrol, fish and game, officers from other jurisdictions that live up here that are driving by. Anything is possible. One of our bison narcotics officers might look more like the gunman than your savior. All right, but follow their commands. An active shooter goes against what law enforcement is normally doing on scene. We come, we make sure everybody's all right, we render aid. In an active shooter, we're not going to render aid until we know the threat has been neutralized. Our main focus is not to save your life. Our main focus is to stop any future killing and then work our way back from there. So when we train and do active shooter training, we have actors and they're told to scream and yell, disregard our orders, grab our legs if they're on the ground when they're running by us screaming for help. So we'll kick you off of us. We will do whatever it takes to make sure that we have stopped the killing before we stop the dying. And then we will start evacuating people. But it's kind of reverse order for us. Obviously, EMS is not going into a hot zone. So you might be responsible for your own survival. If we're still chasing down the gunman and you've been shot, all right, it might be up to you or your neighbor or your family member. It might be up to you to save them. All right? Can you die from a leg wound? You can die from any gunshot wound, right, or any stab wound. It might not seem all that might not be gushing blood, but we don't know what's going on inside. All right? So get some training. All right? Does it have to be formal? Is it Stop the Bleed next? The Stop the Bleed. Has anybody ever been to or heard of the Stop the Bleed by the American Red Cross? We go through it. They teach you CPR. They teach you first aid, wound care. They give us bags. They're throw bags. They have blood clotting agents. They have bandages in there, and they have tourniquets in there. But if you don't know about this stuff and we throw it in there, and you don't have that plan in place, you're not going to know what to do with it. Right? A tourniquet in itself is extremely difficult to put on with two good arms. But imagine having to put a tourniquet on your own arm, and this arm's injured. So you're pretty much doing it with one arm and teeth and everything else. In order for a tourniquet to fully function, it has to be extremely tight. For people who have had a tourniquet on, they say that the tourniquet hurts more than the gunshot wound. So, all right, does it have to be formal if you want to go to the Stop the Bleed or the CPR classes, but can you watch a YouTube video? Right? Can you, right, because what can be used as a tourniquet? Anything, right? Anything can be used on your extremities. But like I said, if you don't have that plan in place beforehand, then it doesn't need to be official, got my CPR, got my first aid card. But if you just watch the YouTube video on how to do something, all right, they're very useful. All right? For those, they don't suffice to us, but if it's saving your life, is that good enough training for you? Yes, it is. So just be aware of all that stuff. If you're involved in an incident, we always think of PTSD with the soldiers, and rightfully so, because we ask them to do so much, they've seen so much, who can blame them? But anybody can be susceptible to PTSD. Any stressor can, depending on the person, can set off PTSD. So obviously if you're involved in a critical incident, if you witness something, you're susceptible to that. Have a plan in place, okay? Go talk to somebody. There's no shame in that. Law enforcement is required to go see the staff psychologist before we return to duty. We fire our gun in the line of duty just to make sure that we're all right. Everybody's susceptible, so have a plan in place. And just like these soldiers, there's nothing, it's terrible, right? To survive the battlefield, to come home to the unseen wounds you bring with us, or that they bring with them, okay? That's just as tragic to me as the ones that die on the field. All right, so have a plan in place to address any psychological issues you might encounter. You hear us call them shooters, gunmen, attackers, threats, whatever. You don't hear us call them out by name. That is by design, all right? I think the worst thing for active shooters is this 24/7 news coverage and the pictures and the Facebook and everything, because as sick and deranged as that act is to us, all right, all these shooters worship the two Columbine. They've actually put out a book with their manifesto in it. These shooters have read that. All right? Just like we have our heroes and people we look up to, these deranged individuals look up to the shooters of Columbine because they're kind of the originals for our time frame. All right? To us, that's sick and demented, but to the other person, says, oh my gosh, they covered, we've been hearing about this guy, he only killed 7 people. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be the next big one. We don't name them. If you're going to think of somebody, think of Rick Rescorla. All right? Think of Christina Anderson, who's really, like Jason said, both of us truly believe that she was kept alive to pass that message on to save other people's lives. Anybody recognize this young lady? Victoria Soto, first grade elementary school teacher at Sandy Hook. You imagine how difficult it is to control a first grade class on any day. Now imagine an active shooter in your school and kids scared. She did her best to keep them away from the threat and quiet until the attacker entered the room that she was in. And she placed herself between the shooter and her students and paid for it with her life. All right, those are the people we need to remember. And the next one, anybody know this young lady? Angela McQueen. No relation to Steve, but probably just as bad, as in Bullet for us. Older Bullet fans, greatest police chase ever, or greatest car chase ever. But anyway, math and gym teacher in Illinois was doing cafeteria duty when a student came in with a gun and produced a gun. She didn't hesitate. She reacted. She tackled him. The gun went off. His intended target was not hit, but a fellow student was. Luckily, it was a superficial injury, and he survived and credits her with saving his life, because the shooter said, I wasn't going to stop until I was stopped. So she held him down until the school resource officer, who was not in the cafeteria at the time, came and detained him. All right? These are the people that we need to know. These are the people that we need to immortalize. Not some useless person that we didn't know about yesterday that turns our world upside down. These are the heroes. These are the people that need to be repeated. All right, really quick. We go through, all right, the physiological, all right, and physical responses of the body, all right, of what happens, right? Denial, deliberation, decisive moment. Have a plan in place. Get through those as fast as you can. And then, what do? All right? Avoid. Get out. Deny. Lock doors, barricades, tactical cinches, door stops, anything you can, and then defend and fight like your life depends on it. People say, why would I go closer to the threat? Why would I go near that door if the gunman's there? You see it with Virginia Tech people who took a proactive approach to at least deny that shooter access to the room were more likely to survive, even if they were shot. So the Virginia Tech case study is classic for why this program works and why you heard Christina Anderson herself say she hid under the desk. I guarantee you that poor young lady will probably never hide again. She will defend herself, she will deny access, but I guarantee her last hope, hopefully it will never happen to her again or anybody else, but I guarantee she won't just hide. Okay? With that being said, two things. If you have any questions, we'll take them now. If you have anything personal, I know somebody came up and they have personal things that they're involved with, their organizations, will be available for those questions as well if you don't want to air it in front of anybody. So does anybody have any general questions? Yes?
If you have a sealed permit and you're faced with a gunman, who hasn't shot anybody yet, at what point in time can you take that gunman out?
At any point where you believe that you can articulate that you feel he is a threat to yourself or others. Yeah, he doesn't have to shoot. Believe me, if we go on a call and there's a gunman and he's far enough away and he's pointing a gun at you, I might give him a command, I might not, but I'm going to shoot him. But the way the law interprets it is that you have to articulate that you were in fear of imminent bodily harm to yourself or somebody else.
And so we have to kind of wrap this up. We have lunch that needs to be served here, and I know everybody was really patient. I think you will stay around a little bit for questions, so you can come up and ask
we'll
questions.
be here.
Thank you. So let's give them a round of applause for coming. Before you leave, if we could just bow our heads and pray, because this was really eye-opening for me, especially when I saw what was happening at the boardroom. All of you know who my husband is, and he's in the boardroom all the time, and just seeing that just frightens me because he could be in that situation. My office, there isn't a way out. There's just a window. So now I'm going to have...
There is a way out.
There is a way out. There's not a door, I should have said a window. And now I'll be looking at that more. So let's just bow our heads right now and ask our dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the law enforcement that was with us today to be able to provide us with information, to think differently, to help us to survive. Lord, we pray every day that we do your will and always your will. We know that you love us. We know that you have the plan already laid out for us. And you know that you've given us the availability, not only through today, but within us to fight. Lord, please be with each and every person. Please be with the law enforcement officers every day as they're out there supporting and defending us. Please protect our village, protect our families that are here with us and our families that are not with us. Please watch over everybody in every situation. Lord, please help us, be with us, put a blanket of protection over every single one of us, that we may pray that these atrocities stop. Please pray over our youth. Please pray over anybody that's this disgruntled, that they choose another option, Lord, and that they don't come after innocent people. But should they choose to do that, Lord, this group of people that have chosen to be with us today now have the tools that they need to defend themselves. Lord, we love you. We give all the glory and honor to you and you alone. Lord, we know that you love us and you'll protect us. For all the unspoken prayers in this room and around the world, we pray to you. Amen. If you have questions, you can come up and ask questions. If not, it'll be lunchtime. Thank you, everybody, for coming.